Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Shauna from Created and Made, and today we're going to talk about 8 different ways you can use tie-dye powder in your arts and crafts and mixed media. Now, I was recently doing a tie-dye project with my kids. This is one of the things that we made. And with the leftover dye, I got curious as to what else I could do with it. And so today I'm going to go ahead and show you 8 different things that I was able to come up with that you also can do with your tie-dye powders. Stay tuned. The very first way to use these tie-dye powders in your crafting is obviously to tie-dye paper. Now this is the most simple, straightforward one that I'm going to show you guys. You just use it like you would on anything that is fabric, and instead you do it with paper. So you would, if you had your tie-dye kit, you would follow the instructions included. This was a different kit that I had with my kids. It's almost done. And you know, it comes with the powder inside. You just add 4, this might be a 2 ounces of water, whatever the measurements are. And then you fold up your papers like so and apply the tie-dye dye to the paper. Now, this is diffusion paper, I believe. So it absorbs well. What you want to use is something that, while it will absorb, is not super thick, so you can still fold it up like this and do what you need to do with it. I mean, this is not diffusion paper here. This is tissue paper, and so I just folded it up, no real rhyme or reason, and I applied the ink to the tissue paper and then put it aside to let it dry some. Now this is not completely dry yet, but I wanted to go ahead and show you guys how it turned out. I mean, that's pretty awesome, I think. And it's tissue paper, so you can do all the things that you would do with tissue paper. You know, use it for collage or in your art journals. And this is just one full piece of tissue paper. Now, if this were all the way dry, I feel like it would be a little more sturdy, but it's not quite dry. I mean, I would leave something like this overnight, but still, like, I just willy-nilly style applied the tie-dye to the paper, folded it up, tied it with some twine, and put it aside, and it still turned out something that is really cool and will be awesome to use in my art journals, especially because, I mean, this is translucent. So when you stick this in an art journal, it's probably going to look amazing, because you'll be able to see the white of the art journal page in these translucent spots. So that's the first way you can use tie-dye powder in your arts and crafts creation. Okay, the second way to use these tie-dye powders in your mixed media arts and crafts creations is as a watercolor powder. Now, some of you may own these products. Ken Oliver makes Color Burst, and what's the other one he makes? Color Sparks, and also Lindy's. I believe I have some Lindy's. Yeah, I do. Lindy's powders look like this, and it's just a powder like all of these other powders. Now, but these can be kind of pricey, especially if you want to have many different kinds of colors and and they sell them in lines and sets, so they can get up there in price. So the second way to use these powders is the way you would use these powders, only at a fraction of the cost. Now, I'm going to go ahead and, this is watercolor paper. I'm going to spray it with some water to give you guys a sample of what you can get if you use these. Now I have a little spoon here, and I'm just sprinkling a little bit of this powder onto the wet cardstock or watercolor paper. Now I can spray it again and it'll start to spread a little bit more, and I'm going to get a second color in here just to change it up a little bit. You'll see how it looks when it mixes. Now the way that people use these is they do it like this. They sprinkle them on, let them spread with the water, or they get a paintbrush and come in and you know, spread this out a bit. But you can also just leave it like this, let it dry, let it run, let it do what it's gonna do, and it can look really interesting and really cool. Now, just to give you an example of what these other ones will do, I mean, that's not too much different than what you're seeing over here, right? Except for the color bursts and the other powders tend to be a mix of several colors, and there's nothing that says that you can't do that with these. Only you can make up your own mixes. Like you can just include a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange, a little bit of whatever you have on hand, but these definitely are comparable to the powders that are out there on the market, only they're much, much cheaper. So that is a second way that you can use these tie-dye powders in your crafty creations. The next way we can use these tie-dye powders in our crafts is as watercolor. Now, what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of the powder. I mean, I'm not doing any measuring here. It's indigo, green, and yellow. This is probably plenty of powder since a little goes a long way. And I am just going to add some water to it. You want to give it just a second to let it dissolve, but it shouldn't take too long. Now I'm going to add my water. I'm not going to spray my water because I feel like it'll go everywhere. So I'm just going to get a dropper, add some water to this, and give it a chance to sort of set up and dissolve so we can use it. I mean, I can help it along a bit with my paintbrush if I want. And we can go ahead and use this as a watercolor. Now, this is Breery's watercolor resist paper. I'm just going to paint over the top of it like I would with any other watercolor. Now, you can just wipe the paint off of the resist part of it, and usually comes right off. Well, as you can see, I mean, it has a lovely watercolor look, just like standard watercolors would. And so that would be a great use for these powders as well. So next up, I'm going to demonstrate a smush. So what I've done is I have sprinkled a little bit of hot pink and sky blue powder on this piece of translucent plastic. I mean, you can do this on plastic. You can do this on, if you have the glass mat, it's fine. You can do this on your non-stick craft sheet. what you want to do is sprinkle the powder and then spray it down with some water. Now you can see the colors pop out there, and all you're going to want to do is take a tag or whatever you have available and mush it down. Now if you like what it looks like right off the bat, you can go ahead and dry it. Try to get it to stop moving. Or you can just go right back in with another mush. I'm going to get another tag. And one more. So, I mean, this is a way to just get some sort of randomized color and texture on the tag without directly applying it with a paintbrush or splattering it. I mean, it's a great way to just get something that looks happenstance, something that looks, you know, I like it, serendipitous almost, with a really easy technique. So that is the smush. The next method we're going to explore is coloring a modeling paste or other mediums. Now, for this example, I'm just using the Crafters Workshop Light and Fluffy modeling paste. So I have my tool, and I'm just going to scoop out some of the modeling paste here. My tool, my palette knife. Now I'm going to use red and yellow tie-dye powder on this example, and again I'm just going to use my tiny spoon and scoop out some of the pigment. I made a little divot there for the pigment to live in. I'm going to do the same thing over here before I come in with the yellow. Now that's likely plenty. I think it'll be more than enough to color this fluffy modeling paste. Now what you want to do is just take your palette knife and just mix that on in. Now I'm going to get this new Dina Wakley stencil out, which I just love. It looks beautiful. And one of these Dina Wakley tags. And we're going to see how this texture paste works through our stencil. Okay, let's take a look. I love that. That looks amazing. It has a great color. It has some dimension to it. Awesome. That turned out great. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this modeling paste cleaned up because we don't want it to dry on our utensils or stencil, and I will be right back with the next technique. So the sixth technique I'm going to show you is making these colorful sprays. Now I have these little spray bottles. I think this one They're different sizes. I don't think I realized that. These were super inexpensive. I got them off of Amazon, and they can be used with. I originally bought them to transfer some of my Dina Wakley gloss sprays into them because, you know, the gloss sprays like to be clogged. So I bought these to kind of transfer some of those colors into these bottles, but they were really inexpensive, and I will drop a link in the description for you. But what I'm going to do is just show you, I'm going to make an indigo blue spray, and it doesn't take much, but of course the more, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to use my tiny funnel. A lot of times when you get these little spray bottles that come with these teeny tiny funnels which are super useful for stuff like this, because I don't want to spill any of this powder on my desk. So I'm just going to, I don't know, 3 little spoonfuls. That should be plenty. Again, the more of the powder you use, the more saturated the color will be, and it kind of dissolves over time. So when we first make it, it's not going to be as saturated as it will look later on. And what I have here is distilled water. I'm going to pour some in this little bowl. And the reason why I'm using distilled water is, I mean, this is a water-based spray. We don't want it to start to mold or anything. So I'm going to take my dropper and just fill this bottle up with my distilled water. Okay, I'm gonna put the cap on and just give it a shake. I mean, you want to make sure that all of that powder is incorporated. And I mean, it dissolves pretty fast, but it's still, over time, the intensity of the color will grow. So I actually have one that I made last night of orange, and this is what it looks like now. I'm just going to give you a quick test of the spray and show you how it compares with a dilution squeezed orange ink spray. So this is my tie-dye spray. As you can see, works very well. And wipe this off and go in with my dilutions. Now, I mean, I would say that those are fairly comparable. Okay, the last technique I'm going to show you guys is how to make a shimmer powder. Now, we made a powder before, like we sprinkled the powder on the water and it bloomed and all of that. And this is similar, but we're going to be adding a mica to make the powder shimmery and sparkly. So we're going to start with some hot pink tie-dye powder. And I'm just going to put about 4 spoonfuls into this little jar. Now, this is a teeny tiny salt shaker. I will link it up at the bottom, but the holes in this thing are way too big for what we're going to be doing. So I will be covering all but one of these little holes. But before I do that, so I've added the tie-dye powder, and now I just want to add some shimmery, shiny mica powder. So I did 4 of the tie-dye powder. I'm going to do 3 of the mica. And I have this shiny gold mica powder too. I think I'll do one of those. Just let's be indulgent. It's gonna be super shiny. And so that's pretty much the extent of it. We're gonna mix it up, but before we do that, I want to put the top on it and then cover the holes on the top. Now all that I do to cover these holes is just add a little bit of Scotch tape over them. I mean, it's not a permanent solution, but it works just fine for my purposes. Now I want to leave one of the holes available so that this will actually come out. Okay, now that we have all of those pretty much covered, I can cover the one that's still open and give this all a shake. Okay, so we've mixed together our mica, our dye powder, and now let's give it a test. There's some watercolor paper. I'm going to go ahead and spray this. And go ahead and give it a shake. Okay, so we see the dye. You can go ahead and spray it to get it to react some more. And I don't know if you guys can see the shimmer, but it is amazing. I'm going to take a photo. Okay, so this is all dry, and I don't know if you can really see it, but it is super shiny and shimmery. The final technique I want to show you guys is using your tie-dye powders on a gel plate. Now, there are many different techniques you can do using the gel plate. I'll show you just a few. The first one is to apply the powder before you put anything else on the plate. So I have this fuchsia that I will sprinkle on, and I have a little bit of turquoise. Find those two colors to work well together, and then I will apply some white paint, and once I start to roll it out, you'll see the colors start to bloom. Now this is just going to make a really nice, subtle, soft background that could be used for anything. Collage, card making, art journaling. It's gonna be a really lovely effect, and it's soft and subtle. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Finally, another technique you could use is using a stencil with the powder. So first I want to go ahead and get some paint on. You know what? I'm going to mix in this gold instead of go ahead and put my stencil over the top, and I'm going to go in with some Rouge Red powder. Just going to sprinkle it quite a bit because there's a stencil at play here, and I'm going to go in with my brayer and try to activate some of this. that. Let's get this. Whoa, how cool. I really hope that got your creative juices flowing and that you guys are excited to try out some tie-dye powders in your mixed media and crafty designs. So I hope you guys liked this video, and if you did, please leave a like and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I will see you guys next time. Have a creative day. Bye bye.